Chris, how's it going, man?
Going well, Tim. Another
Well,
long week.
it's the middle of the summer. We just My son was at Scouts camp all week, and funny thing, he was at. I mean, short digression on where I'm going with this is he was at Cap Constantine, which is a Scouts camp up at Possum Kingdom Lake, about an hour west of Fort Worth, and my wife and we do this every year. They had do parents' night or family night on Friday night, and we drive up. Usually, sometimes we stay. When they were in Colorado last year, we stayed about 50 miles away, and then we showed up on family night, right? We did it this year, but we could not find a hotel within 30 or 40 miles, and it was just not just people doing summer vacation. I think it was the fact that there was a YMCA camp. There were like five or six camps all right there, and you could tell by some of the cars in the hotel parking lots, these were the families who were all just showing up to pick up their kids or do things like attend family night. It's funny that some of the bigger announcements that I think are open to interpretation, or maybe one of those things. Let's announce it and let's see what people say. Kind of. I think
Yep.
I think we're seeing some of that right now. And I mean, let's kick it off. Actually, I don't think we need to dive into politics, but I do want to talk real quick about two things I saw. One, Elon Musk is back at it. I think the musical chairs and the separation from the president's administration last week, all of a sudden has him, at least he says, focusing back on his businesses, including Tesla. And one of the things he talked about was the fact that he is not new from him. He wants to end EV tax credits. Um, at the end of the day, isn't that what this is about? Understanding the customer and influencing the customer buy something, and it's not about what the government tells them they should buy or they need to buy, right? I mean, that's what this is about. But here he is trying to own that conversation and probably do some positioning from a personal brand standpoint, right? And for his companies. Um,
Yeah, it's the whole Musk Trump scenario is flabbergasting actually. If you want to know my opinion on it, but yeah, the subsidy side of things, actually, Musk came out a year ago or more during the campaign and was okay with actually getting rid of the subsidy, or mentioned it, because he thought that was at that time a benefit to
yeah,
Tesla, because he thought that they had a more competitive product. Now, obviously, things have continued. Maybe it was a couple of years ago, but obviously the products have continued to evolve, and there's many more products, EV products on the market. But I think we're already seeing the dive of EV interest, and the consideration set of really everybody within that's in the buying market is, I think I saw something that was down more like 17%, 15% consideration, which it had been up closer to 30% just a
you
year
bet.
ago.
Yeah.
So uh, my family just bought a used Maverick, and that has a regen EV or hybrid EV capability within it, but certainly not a plug-in at this point. But I don't know. I think the subsidies. I can't see the subsidies actually going away, and I think there's too many people in Congress that want to keep
Yeah.
people happy, and taking that away is going to be too much of a lift, even for Trump at this point.
Well, we have an accessory truck as well. We have a Maverick XLT, or no, a Ranger XLT. Pardon me. And It is not right. It's not electric. It's not hybrid. But the thing that I'm just curious about here is that news was in the same paragraph. It was like a Musk update, right? It was an X company's update more than anything else. Was also the fact that X, what a lot of people still call tweets and Twitter, um, it basically they have arranged it in a way that Google can no longer scrape or crawl X, right? And they say in the same breath that they're doing the same against Microsoft and OpenAI. Now, the drama's been playing out in front of us a little bit in terms of what Elon approves of or disapproves of in a litigious fashion against Sam Altman. But this is all about data. This is all about what, rightfully so, I think the X companies, when you look at their assets with Starlink and connectivity to homes and understanding what people consume from a media standpoint in their homes, as well as 3.5 to 4 million, somewhere in there of these. I live in Austin, so there's a lot of them here. Sure feels like there's more than that, but the number of cars that are connected to Dojo, their supercomputer. There's a lot of data that conglomerate of the X companies is already has and is looking to capitalize on. X being the one that's public, and they're blocking these companies off. In contrast, let's switch gears, pun intended, HubSpot, which to me has always been the CRM and marketing automation company that could for years. I've
Right.
known, if people look deep, they'll find a somewhat grainy video of me with Mike Volpe, who at the time was the chief marketing officer for HubSpot, in their HubSpot TV studios. And I've known Brian Halligan, I've known Dharmesh for years. Thanks to Chris Brogan, really, more than anybody else who introduced me to these guys. But I got on the LinkedIn last week, and Dharmesh was right at the top of my feed talking about how now with HubSpot, you can use ChatGPT, not an OpenAI API, nothing like that, but ChatGPT to analyze your CRM data. And look at the contrast in what we just said is here you have the richest man in the world who, with his most public of companies, is doing everything he can to keep anybody from getting that data. And here is probably one of, pound for pound, the most popular and powerful CRM marketing automation systems out there for at least mid-sized business, right? For mid-cap organizations and small businesses, and a whole lot of business unit or departmental things that even enterprises and Fortune 2000 brands do. And they're being told it's okay to put all their data into ChatGPT. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we're seeing with what Musk is doing. Musk has the data, right? That he is his own LLM. He's sitting on top of one of the most robust data sets, certainly about individuals in the world, right? So he sees that. I would assume he sees that as one of his largest assets. So it's kind of like an iPhone Android scenario, right? You have the Google, Microsoft kind of world, kind of joining on, or maybe not joining, but together on one side, and you have Musk with his, Musk and other, Meta type capabilities, right? You have all those social media giants that are really the ones that are holding the data, especially the most interesting data, kind of moving forward in terms of personality and the use case, and now even shopping coming through, both the AI side with Grok and with ChatGPT and all that. So I think they're just staking out their claims, right? This is where I want to play, and this is where you want to play. On the HubSpot side, HubSpot doesn't have any data, right? As all of their customers have the data. So it's like, how do you be able to bring that in potentially into something where they can maybe own or oversee or mine or potentially use, depending on how those terms and conditions are with the use cases. That could be an interesting play if you're going to put your CRM more into, maybe not completely into the public sphere, but maybe partially into a public sphere that's now being controlled by HubSpot with a little bit more of an open door.
Well, in
So those are my first
totally,
thoughts on
totally.
it.
And my old friend Christopher Penn um, said some time ago, he's like, when you do this, if you're uploading data for ChatGPT to make sense of it or to perform a task for you, um, you have to understand that it may or may not be right a clear security or privacy threat or risk But he says it more plainly in metaphorically. He's like, it's like dropping a grain of sand in the Sahara Desert. Um, so my point has always been, we have a choice right now as business to, we're coming off of 17 years. I mean, the way I've always seen it, you've heard me say it before, is we've got, less than 20 years now of two or three companies representing at least 50% of what companies spend to operate, right? And we have a unique opportunity when it comes to open source artificial intelligence and the breadth of AI vendors, contrary to OpenAI, Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, those that have been luxuriously, um, you know,
Bathing in our advertising dollar for a
that's
long
it. That's it.
time.
Making it a requirement to be the medium or the intermediary to find customers, um, and trying to
Yep.
convert that same thing now when it comes to conversational agents, conversational models. To me, real quick, I'm asking for a verdict here. I don't get it. I don't understand. I do think small business has every natural uh, reason to want to build chat gpt wrappers, their own gpts right now. It's only $20 or $200 a month, and you get all the fixins that you need with that to do some pretty amazing
Yep.
stuff. I would never say that it's not. It's just that you can't control it, though. You only do what they allow you to do. And matter of fact is, when you do upload a spreadsheet to it, you may still have a copy of that spreadsheet, but you have no idea where it went.
But but so do potentially billions of other people, or lose access to the data
That's
that's in it,
right.
right?
So, in all, I mean, what does this mean? Is in essence, HubSpot is it fuel on the fire and feeding the beast is what they've just done. I think they had lots of choices on what they could do, and they went with OpenAI. Do that, I fully expect that, and I haven't gone back and researched it, but I know that Dharmesh and the team he's got working on both agents and AI generally. I know that they are very diligent. By all means, I know they did this with confidence. It just on the outside looking in, it just doesn't look right to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're a CRM, or if that is your play, how do you, and taking it back to automotive, like how do you
That's
get out
it.
of that? Because everybody else is overtaking you, essentially. If you're a CDP, or even the conversation we're going to have with Will Farley from Reynolds, those DMS providers are the core. That's the data set. So how they expand, how CDPs expand, whatever the next gen happens to be when you start tossing AI on top of it, the little CRM essentially, once you have an ESP that can deploy your campaigns, you don't need a CRM anymore once you have a couple of these other platforms in place. Um, Data Axle has without being too self-aggrandizing here, but Data Axle has one of the largest consumer databases in the US, and we have attached an AI engine on the back end that we look at thousands of attributes that a person has, and we are creating propensity models, and we're creating kind of lookalikes and likelihood predictions about people. That is really what I think HubSpot is trying to do here, right? To allow customers to use an AI agent, or use the Chat GPT capabilities to look inside of their customer list or their customer database, and try and get some learnings out of it. So the problem is obviously the exposure of that data. What Data Axle does is we actually do that propensity. We keep it inside of our models, and then you have the capability of saying, "Hey, Tim's in market," or "Hey, Tim's more of a propensity to be a Ford Ranger owner," or a use case like that. So there's places where you have to put up those walls and those boundaries. We can still have the same outcome, but I think the organization of that data, the organization exposure of that data, is what we really have to be concerned about. I fully expect that this is much more of a play than just on the surface we're looking at it and saying, hey, yeah, they have some exposure here to ChatGPT. There's a bigger play here. HubSpot's too big to fail. Essentially, they're going to not make a decision like that without have thought 5 steps down the street.
And this is, you and I have talked a little bit about who we will have as guests on this podcast, and I'm super excited about Will joining us here in just a second. But bottom line is, Tom Klein. If you know Tom, this is the kind of thing that I know that he is all over right now when it comes to compliance and the regulatory
Yep.
environment. OpenAI again is not going to be able to custom configure itself for each of what are now maybe 20 or 30 states that have different cybersecurity or data privacy laws in place, as well as and again, that's part of my argument, right? Feeding the beast is the big picture. Is the more of us who contribute to the success of OpenAI, right? And that's not just paying the monthly bill, that's or license there, but it's feeding the beast. It's actually that's how AI works. And it says in their T's and C's, we may or may not ingest and we may or may not train on your data. Translated means we're going to swallow everything you give us.
And we're going to chew it, and
And
we're going to
chew it, we're going to spit it out. So
yeah.
These are consequential. No doubt about it. It's what my friend Jeremiah Oyang says all the time. He goes, AI is consequential, period. It is going to be consequential. And here we are.
I honestly think that the view within automotive specifically, because that's where we're playing the most, right? And I shake my head at it because right now, 80% of AI in automotive is, either a chat bot or it's some kind of a phone system that's talking to your customer and setting up
Right.
an appointment, right? That's not even AI, right? It certainly is. I don't want to say it that way, but that is not where we need to be 6 months from now, right? Maybe absorbing that conversion from voice to text, and you're now bringing that into an engine that's going to make propensity decisions and decisions on how to communicate with that customer moving forward. But the actual, hey, I'm Betty, the AI person scheduling your appointment, which is how most people are viewing AI, that's a nice assist.
That's it.
But it's the data that's being captured within that, and how we use that moving forward is really where the power of
No,
AI
I
lives.
agree. I agree. So, I mean, it's these are questions that I think you and I are going to ask on each show, with people that sit in different chairs that are looking at what's happening right now with data on one hand and AI on the other. It's an interdependent thing we're looking at here, and I think that's it's all going to be consequential. There are things that you will stop doing, and there are people who will lose their jobs. There are people that will be reskilled. There are people, and that has always happened, and that's something for us to talk about some other time. But right now, I think the decisions you make in terms of how you go about leveraging automation or artificial intelligence, the best intelligence, as you and I know, is going to be that first party data. And I think that's you already said it, right? The DMS world and the CRM world in automotive, lots of sensitive information, lots of social security numbers, emails, birthdays, home addresses, all the things that the dark web markets are full of, right? And the big opportunity here is going to be to make things secure.
It's a scary thought that there are 25,000 individual dealerships out there, any of which could easily upload a little Excel file that they downloaded from their CRM or from their DMS that has specific PPI in it that all of a sudden gets out into the world, and that's a consequence. That's your AI is consequential without a doubt. But I think HubSpot in this case, there's a bigger play here. We just can't see it yet. They're too smart not to have thought down the road quite a bit. But it's going to be an interesting time.
Right, you are.
I mean, Chris, that's as we're talking now almost on a weekly basis. It's stuff like that is fascinating in terms of what big tech companies are doing, what big platform companies are doing. And without further ado, I think we should get right into who our guest is today from a big platform company. Um, that's Will Farley, and he's the vice president of data strategy and the chief privacy officer for Reynolds and Reynolds. And the Reynolds organization, as you and I know, does some fabulous work and has for a long time in the automotive world. Um, he's a graduate of Bob Jones University and Old Dominion University, and he began his career at Reynolds 25 years ago as a support specialist, and he's persevered through hard work to get to where he is today. And I think that's proven. I think I may have mentioned it to you one other time, but I got a chance to speak at Cliff Bank's Autovate last fall, and in some of the social things we did in the evenings, I got a chance to have dinner with and have drinks with some of the Reynolds team. And as I'm telling them about what we do at Brain Trust with customer data platforms and artificial intelligence, I heard them all say to me is like, well, if you want to work with Reynolds, you got to call Will Farley. And that was the same thing everybody told me. I've since talked to him about specific dealer opportunities we've had that cross that that cross that opportunity to probably work alongside Reynolds. And I can say that he's a bridge builder. I can say that honestly, a lot of what he's doing is very respectful for what dealers want to do in a very responsible way with integrating systems and making sure data is where it needs to be and that it's cared for the way that it should be. Um, and I think he just shows some empathy every time I talk to him because it's not always dealers. I think I've brought some people in financial services, maybe insurance, that are very interested about accelerating deal jackets and things like that. Really sexy stuff. But um, you know, his passions are all of that. But he's a family man. Been married for 26 years, has 3 kids, and I bet he's got some fun stories for us because he also puts on the stripes and he gets out there for varsity football, basketball, and baseball. Calling strikes, fouls. Doing what he can to keep people in line on the field, just like he does with data. Well, without talking any more about that, I'm sure you got things you can tell us. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Faster Horses.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Chris. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
I was just saying that I saw his bio and saw he was married for 26 years, and I thought he was an old man. And this young whippersnapper shows up, and then I thought about it when you were talking about that, Tim. And I've been married for 26 years, and I have 3 kids. So I think we're equally of age. So I'll try and do my best to give you the deference of your age and wisdom through this conversation today. But it's a little further even beyond that. It's just that Reynolds is not just a company that's been through the machinations of the auto industry, but they've kind of been that glue that holds automotive together for so long, right? So it's really interesting. I'm excited to have this conversation because there's so many things that are happening new right now, and honestly, every platform is doing something new and trying to evolve this place that we are from a data analytics standpoint, customer data and privacy certainly, and personalization, and everything that Reynolds stands for. So really excited to get into this conversation today. So, Will, what is a VP of data strategy? Like what is that today in 2025, given what's happened over the last, I don't even think we want to talk what's happened over the last 12 months to other competitors within the space, but for God's sakes, data strategy is everything today, isn't it?
Yeah. So simply put, Reynolds data strategy is about helping customers to be successful. More specifically, my team has responsibility for number one, the Reynolds Certified Interface Program, which helps third parties with their integration needs. Number two, supporting our OEM sales team to handle OEM contracts and OEM integrations. Number three, unifying data from external sources, so sources like Chrome Data or Kelley Blue Book or JD Power used car guides, to incorporate that data into Reynolds solutions. And number four, helping dealers with their own custom data movement needs. And so all of these responsibilities allow me to have a consolidated enterprise view of the data movement inbound and outbound to the Reynolds retail management system.
Well, from a privacy standpoint, you just opened up about what 15 different data channels right there. How does privacy fit into all of this? Because that's every time we're having this conversation with dealers, it's probably the ninth thing on their list. They're not really thinking about it, but it should be number one or two as they consider the potential legal and financial possibilities that it kind of show up with not being prepared for data privacy and data ownership and data control.
Yeah, absolutely. Privacy is a big deal, or it should be a big deal. A lot of the data that we handle includes, consumer information. Most of it is considered PII, or personally identifiable information. Because of that, Reynolds feels a real sense of duty to provide tools and processes to help the dealers, maintain their compliance with protecting consumer data.
How many dealers are you guys active with right now?
We typically do what?
Ballpark.
Yeah, several thousand. I don't have the exact number, but it also depends on how you count it. Are you just talking about the DMS? Are you talking about a number of our other solutions? Reynolds has a lot of solutions that we offer to dealers that don't require a Reynolds DMS. I would say Reynolds document services. A lot of people don't realize that our document services are probably in about 90 to 95% of all dealerships in the country.
Yeah.
So we're everywhere.
You're touching everything. That was exactly kind of my point, is that
Exactly.
you have all this data coming in from multiple different places. You got the ownership of it. You have the use cases of how it's being used and potentially pushed out and brought in and adjusted and appended. Man, that is the crux of what Tim and I like to talk about on this show.
Definitely. I mean, that's your privacy right now is a fascinating moving target. It's as you know, as we all know, we don't have a national law. We've got some things that are talking about policies on how data is shared between across borders, right, transatlantically or otherwise between countries that the government has deemed we can trust or we can't. Um, and there's some FTC safeguard rule and some tenets of it that look a whole lot like some of the privacy laws. The the thing that I'm always fascinated with this is a lot of this has been going on for some time in terms of privacy legislation. It still has been left unto the states, which gets really fascinating for some dealers that sell lots of cars to people that live in different places, or they have rooftops that span many states, right? It's a hard thing to follow. Um, if that's not enough, here comes AI in the last 3 years. And honestly, Will, what do you really see right now with the wave of open source and public models that you open up LinkedIn, it seems to be what everybody's enamored about is what they can prompt and what they can wrap into their own GPT there's a lot happening there. And what do you see in terms of Reynolds and people using technology like that alongside any of those tools, including the DMS? Are there things you can talk about yet? Are there things on the roadmap that have to do with more automation and more intelligence, the way that people are starting to see these things?
Yeah, so I think talking specifically about the big models like OpenAI, ChatGPT, Reynolds doesn't allow any AI models direct access to the system. Uh, you know, at the end of the day, most of the or a majority of the data that's on the DMS belongs to the dealers. So Reynolds does defer to the dealers. Ultimately they can do what they want with their own data. I believe there are some significant ethical concerns with that. And Tim, I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts on
Well,
We'll be here all day on this one.
that.
yeah, no,
Is that a good open-ended question?
yeah. Well, if anybody follows me on LinkedIn, I do believe that OpenAI is the AOL of AI. I mean, I do believe that public models in general are like public toilets, that sometimes they work and sometimes they don't because the public uses them, right? They throw anything they want to in them. With AI models, we hear about hallucinations, we hear about inaccuracies. Um, and I just remind people all the time that if you upload something to ChatGPT, it's not that you won't ever see it again because you still have the original copy of it, I hope, but you can't get back what you already gave it. And their T's and C's say that they may or may not ingest or may not train on your data. Uh, I think it's super smart. If I can talk directly to what you just said is Reynolds' approach, I think that's brilliant. I mean, it is not, you know, uh, anything that's genius per se, but it is responsible, absolutely, because we don't understand yet. It's still way early in this game, right? We're in the nascent days of artificial intelligence and AI agents, in what they can do and what is worthy of investing in such technology. And at the end of the day, I got to say I'm aligned. If you're asking me what I think, I'm aligned with your approach there. I don't believe it. In fact, before you joined us, Chris and I were just talking about the recent news that HubSpot made. To allow ChatGPT to come in and with one of their founders on LinkedIn saying straight out, now you can take all the data in your CRM and put it into ChatGPT and learn things that we can't tell you.
That might be the worst idea I've ever heard for
That
automotive CRM.
that's the it's
Because Will, really, and I know we're jumping over onto the CRM, I guess, away from the DMS conversation, but for God's sakes, is there anything worse than the data that sits within a dealer's CRM that's not being updated? That's wrong. That's not being updated, and then the action points that are being added into the CRM, half of those are wrong too. So, like, do we get into a situation, and please, expand on it from the other tools that you have and the other platforms that are under the Reynolds name or the Reynolds organization? Like, how do you think about the, the data itself, the integrity of the data, which you've talked to, and that's important to keep out of the AI world, but the quality of the data, the hygiene of the data, the cleansing of the data, because at that point, then we can get into a conversation about how to use it for AI for the powers of good. But how do you think about just data in general? Since you're the head of strategy for data, how does that come off your desk?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and the really quick, brief answer is, we need a unified AI data layer, right? So let me blow that out a little bit. We will use our wisdom and experience, I think was the phrase you used earlier. I'm going to go back to the early uh, phases of my career around 25 years ago. The DMS was the center of the automotive retail landscape. There were brand new tools like websites, CRMs, desking applications, vehicle management solutions. that were all very new. Just a few years after that, there was an emphasis on online service appointments and other fixed operations tools. Everyone was eager to get their hands on those tools, just like we're hearing about AI today. The ultimate purpose for AI, just like 25 years ago, using a CRM or a desking tool, was to create or is to create efficiencies for the consumer and for the employee. It's supposed to provide quick, appropriate responses that lead to better outcomes. The problem is, from an automotive retail perspective, a lot of what is being called AI really doesn't deliver on the promises of efficiencies and better outcomes, right? And that's mainly attributable to how the previous version of technology I just referenced was developed and implemented. So traditionally, vendors created software solutions that address a single issue. They then take those single issue solutions and try and integrate them into an established solution where it adds really they add to a cluster of other single issue solutions that somewhat work together, but not really. Where those solutions can function, but the user and the customer experience is not ideal. The danger with AI compared to a single issue software tool is that AI can actually take action and do the wrong thing, right? AI can, say the wrong thing to a consumer. Tim mentioned it a moment ago about AI hallucinating, right? And just fabricating facts, right? There's a big risk there. And that's why it's so important to have a unified AI layer that's designed to capitalize on the efficiencies, maximize the outcomes for dealers and for our customers.
What does that look like for Reynolds? Because there's, you know, the average dealer has what, 12, 15 different platforms, half of which have customer data in them, all of which have some kind of transactional information in them. Does Reynolds look at itself as a component of that conversation in the future, or is it an overarching solution in the future?
Yeah, I think the future is here. From a Reynolds standpoint, Reynolds is powering AI. Let me give you a couple of examples. Reynolds has created what we refer to as Spark AI, which takes advantage of our unified AI data layer. Spark AI is comprised of 5 different modules. We have conversational AI, which transcribes and summarizes phone calls and identifies consumers who need immediate follow up by dealership management. We have engagement AI, which generates customized conversational text messages to prospects in order to help set sales appointments in the dealership. We've got a vehicle merchandising AI, which generates smart vehicle images, develops unique descriptions optimized for lead conversions, and highlights key vehicle features quickly and easily. We've got Prospect AI, which identifies customers who have a high propensity to buy. And then Appointment AI, which is an AI agent that handles inbound phone calls to schedule service appointments. And by the way, I think the Appointment AI may be one of my favorites. I've gotten to play with it a little bit. I think it's really cool. But these are all these AI modules are real and they are deployed. So Reynolds doesn't just talk about AI; we're actually incorporating AI into business workflows.
Well, and I think that's I think that's admirable because that's to be honest, that we all know that to have a business application of technology and for the humans to actually use it, it has to fold into the way people do things already to some degree. Even if you're making things more efficient, even if you're removing steps or time from decision making, reporting, or the customer experiences, what have you, right? These are all things that consume parts of our day, and technology is always promised to do things for us faster, better, and cheaper. AI as a as a movement, if we can call it that, it's the first technology in ever. It is the first one to show up and be able to do all three of those things. And to the point you're making and what I'm hearing you say, tell me if I've got this wrong, Will, but y'all are taking at Reynolds, and Reynolds, when I say y'all, I mean Reynolds as a company and all the products, but you in the position that you are, because we're gonna ask a few more things about security. Uh, but where you're going with this, it's almost a very pragmatic. Let's proof of value, right? If am I putting words in your mouth? But it's a pragmatic proof of value with you guys being able to issue and bring to market some of the things you just mentioned, instead of being the reactive way, which you started with, which is how do we just make sure that we can do integration with whatever the market is bringing?
Yeah. No, Tim, you're absolutely right. It is very pragmatic. It fits very nicely into all of the dealers' current workflows. We're not trying to boil the ocean. We're not trying to, revolutionize the world. We're just trying to make dealers' lives easier so that they can be more successful and so that their customers can have a better experience.
So Will, and I do not have the background that Tim has on this, but as I think about it from the dealer standpoint, if you have a unified data layer that you're talking about, and that's bringing in multiple outside platforms of data, right, that are outside of Reynolds, correct?
Correct.
Other partners, inventory, service marketing, whatever they end up coming in, CDPs, CRMs, all that kind of stuff. That comes into a dealer or a dealer group unified data layer. And then what you're putting on top of that are these 5 different modules, which I'm sure will grow over time, but say 5 different modules. And are they able to utilize the data from all of these other partners that are coming into that unified data layer and then act on that through those different modules?
Yeah, so each module is unique to the business process. In some cases, yes, there may be demographic data, behavioral data that is relevant to that particular module. In other cases, it may not necessarily need to be. I would say the answer to your question is when it's relevant or when it's available, absolutely. But a lot of the data that exists is first party transactional data or other types of first party data belonging to the dealer, and we're going to use that as much as we can as well.
Of course, yeah. So in my mind, as I've been kind of thinking through this over the last several years, is how do we aggregate all of the data across all of the different platforms and then utilize that through using AI or more traditional, we'll call it marketing automation or propensity models or whatever the case may be, to make predictions about what we should be doing. Your point, I think, is to, if I'm hearing you right, is to say, hey, we can pick and choose the data that we need. We don't need to think about it all. It's one big mess, which it may be coming in from different platforms. But we can pick and choose and utilize that data and apply the AI in that process, and probably down the pike some, as those responses come back and as we're able to measure the effectiveness of those campaigns or those predictions, obviously you get smarter. Maybe at that point we're integrating more platform data as we learn 2, 3, 4 years from now to kind of manage that process. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. You said it better than I could.
I've been thinking about it for a long time. It's what gets me up in the morning. But yeah. I think, I've been in this world playing mostly on the data analytics and the marketing side of it, but having access to, if all you do is you live in a CRM and you live in your CDP, that's not enough, right? In the scheme of things. And every time I talk to a dealer or a group, it's how do we begin to think about all of the data that you have, all working in concert. And especially if you're a 5-point dealer group, hey, Chris McTagg might show up in your Ford dealership and in your Jeep dealership, right? Like, how do we at least cross that? So that's an important play And I know it's important for you, just pulling all the data into one place and securing that from a privacy standpoint. But then the next step is, advocating and initiating and executing and whatever that has to be. And hopefully, in a simple prompt style basis or a marketing journey style basis where we can maybe not set it and forget it, but at least get to a situation where we have something that's actionable by a dealer group.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's it. Is at the end of the day, it's not even the dealer; it's the customer that is going to dictate the the perseverance, the success, the growth or not of the dealership and the OEMs behind them. And in a lot of things you just said, Chris, and Will, a lot of the things you just talked about, because you still haven't gone down the whole list. We haven't asked you to, but you, you haven't gone down the whole list of what the Reynolds menu looks like right now in terms of products. But you did say well enough. You're in 90 some odd percent of retail automotive businesses today, and um, I think removing friction from the customer experience. It's it's no secret that no one enjoys taking 4 hours to buy a new vehicle. No one enjoys sitting in a waiting room for an hour and a half, and they really don't enjoy getting on a shuttle or having a loaner car to go 20 miles in the wrong direction just to get their car serviced, back in the other direction. Uh, and here we are in 2025, and dealers are finally starting to address these very things. They're starting to understand it wasn't always price, and it wasn't always the OEM that made it possible or not, right? In terms of the product quality, it is essentially what we do for our customers in terms of what we demand of them. So let me just say this is do you feel do you feel right now, Will, that Reynolds is the general feeling across the company right now that uh, y'all are moving in this direction of doing just that, making life better and more empathetic, actually, and thoughtful for customers. And as you answer that, one thing we haven't talked about is the work you guys did alongside Full Path recently. That I think is interesting for sure in the land of customer data platforms, marketing automation on one hand, right?
Right.
And how a non Reynolds company is able to deliver some of what I'm describing there, right?
Right. Yeah. So let me talk about, I'll say two different things related to this and what we're doing. So number one, I'll touch on what we've called a Goobagoo Curator. That's the relationship with Full Path that you mentioned. So Goobagoo Curator, Goobagoo, just for those who don't know, was a Reynolds acquisition in 2021. Historically, Goobagoo was primarily known for being a website chat provider, but Goobagoo also has a virtual retailing solution. But most recently, we've rolled out Goobagoo Curator, and it's a unified intelligence engine. It pulls from the richest first-party data available, including DMS transactional data, behavioral data, demographic data, and it gives a holistic view of the dealership's customers with actionable recommendations. And so it curates right that audience, and then to your point, with our relationship with FullPath, we can execute those campaigns. And so that's I think a great example of making life easier for the dealer and for the consumer. And the reason I say it's easier for the consumer is because the campaigns are more intelligent than a traditional automotive retail marketing campaign.
Sure.
And so you're not going to get a mailer or an email for a car that you sold 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And some of the frustrating things that we as consumers experience whenever we get marketing material from dealers. And
Can,
so
can you please make sure that happens? Oh, yeah. Just little story. I've got a warranty. They've sent me 4 letters in the past week and a half. I've gotten warranty opportunities for a Kia I've never owned, down to the VIN. I was like, you're not even you're going after me specifically. I've never owned a Kia in my life. Not that there's anything wrong with Kias, but please let's figure out how we get that data hygiene to drive our communication. Certainly.
Right, exactly, and it is really frustrating for consumers, and you can hear it in your voice, right, as you share those stories. And I think we all have similar stories like that. And so we don't want that to be the case. And we think the Goobagoo Curator is really going to go a long way to reduce that customer friction that Tim referenced earlier. Another example of, kind of Reynolds being on the right path. Um, Reynolds acquired a company called AutoVision in 2023. With that acquisition, we worked with the AutoVision team that has many years of experience in the vehicle acquisition business, and we developed a solution called Avery, which is actually trained for use specifically for used vehicle acquisition and sale. And Avery is able to see what's in the dealer's inventory, provide a score, and whether or not that vehicle is a good fit in that dealer's inventory based on the dealership itself and its local market conditions. But best of all, Avery can actually show its work. Avery can tell you how it arrived at a certain calculation or some of its other recommendations. So we believe that's a really powerful tool that's going to make dealers' lives a lot easier and a lot better.
Yeah, well, that's super exciting. I mean, we one of the things we do at Brain Trust is we work very closely with Telium as a customer data platform and Snowflake as a performance data warehouse, and uh, and Databricks, who we've worked with outside of automotive, but has now shown an interest in getting into automotive to be an AI enabler. And even we'll take Telium for a second. On April 8th, they announced that they had successfully proven out a new functionality to connect with a model context protocol um, to privately and securely have AI agents go and be a part of a customer experience and personalizing or individualizing experience in the pharmaceutical world, right? In a place where HIPAA. This is a little different than FTC safeguard and the Texas Data Privacy and Security Act, right? Um, it's we see that the world of agents, right, which is a whole other podcast, a series of podcasts, probably to talk about the limitless myriad opportunities with agents. Looking back at Reynolds and looking at your well um, intentioned pragmatism. And I'm saying that with all the respect in the world. The velocity at which these things are coming to market right now. Um, do you see that you'll have greater opportunity to continue to be Reynolds that everybody has known with more bridges built? So to say that from an integration standpoint and from a symphonic dealer operation standpoint, um, to probably maintain the value that you have today as we start to see other systems like this that come along and start to handle large swaths of customer experiences. Long way of saying that is Reynolds still, do you see a way to persevere as being one of those sources of truth with dealer information across not just a store but all stores within a group?
Yeah, definitely. We're always looking for opportunities to improve ourselves so that we can help the dealership win. Right. That's our goal. That's our purpose. That's why we get up in the morning and come to work, is to make sure that we can help dealers be successful. So whatever we need to do with regard to pivoting to new technologies, embracing or adapting new technologies, we're happy to do that. I'm excited about that. I think there should be a lot of excitement, in this industry because of all of the wonderful things that are available or the potential that they offer. And so I think from a philosophical perspective, Reynolds is definitely headed in that direction, and excited about the future.
Will, do you think, and then this is, putting on your hat and thinking 5 years out, do you think that we see more consolidation in all of these platforms? It was kind of the question I alluded to before, is that does Reynolds see itself as becoming a single source? Of course, you sell as a single source now, but
Yeah.
dealers don't buy as a single source in many cases, and then that creates a situation of the integrations that Tim was talking about. Do you see 5 years down the line that we have fewer options for dealers that do more, or more options for dealers that do less, probably, from a platform standpoint?
Yeah, boy, that's a great question, and I wish I knew the answer because I could probably make
You
some
have a lot of money. We don't need a lot of
yeah.
money.
No, I would say that I believe history repeats itself. So I'm going to go back to kind of what I mentioned earlier in the conversation about 25 years ago, when many CRMs and desking tools and vehicle acquisition tools came out. Um, Really, you see that in any industry, that there's going to be consolidation, and there's probably going to be a handful of tools that are the winners, right? That get the most adoption, and so those are the ones that dealers are going to use. So I do believe that there will be consolidation in 5 years. It might be even longer than 5 years, maybe 7 to 10 years. But in 7 to 10 years, I think we will have a pretty good feel for which AI tools are the most effective in their particular segment or category. I can certainly see variable ops versus fixed ops, right? Because those are two different animals. And I could definitely see kind of leaders on a different leader on each side of those.
Yeah, I think we're getting to a place um, there's a split of the path, right? It's going to have to head in a direction that either there's going to be consolidation, even like a Techion is trying to take on that kind of consolidation, one source scenario, versus I think some of the, like a Reynolds or a CDK, or some of the other DMSs and associated platforms are still in a best in class conversation, I think, and I'm really interested on how that's going to play out, because we've seen it, over the last couple of years with CDPs. People jump into a CDP and they're like, "Oh, this isn't what I expected," and they're jumping out into a CDP, and it's not really a CRM, but they're doing my marketing automation and they have my media budget. It's just like there's a lot of, I think, angst with dealers right now over the last several years, that, like, hey, we're not sure where this is kind of going to head, and I think they still like the idea of flexibility to be able to kind of move in and out, and then we'll see how that plays out. But I'd be surprised if all of a sudden we end up going into one conglomerate scenario where dealers have to pay $100,000 a month, but they get everything. I
Right.
think that flexibility, I think, from the dealer's mind, I think is going to be still important.
Yeah, I think you're right. At the end of the day, dealers are going to want choice, and there's going to be some trial and error, right, over the next few years as dealers figure out what tools are going to be the best. And whatever it is that the dealers are looking for, Reynolds wants to be there to provide that solution again to help them be successful.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, and I think uh, I don't know that everybody appreciates that, really. Um, and I'll say that about Reynolds, and I'll say that about other DMS or legacy automotive technology companies. Right? Is I think deep down, everyone really wants to be able to provide what the dealer wants and the dealer needs and would use for the purposes of gaining time and growing profits, right? And I think that's really thank you for everything you shared with us today. Let me ask you this: do you you know here in here in Texas, uh, we've got we've got some interesting things in terms of well, let's just talk what the NFL is doing right now with because of course I'm going to bring it back to your officiating is this rule about kickoffs and the kicking team having to sit there and wait so long, right, until the ball is caught
Mhm.
before they can charge down the field. Um, in all, what's one thing that you've seen, or what's one thing we've talked a lot about data regulations, right? We've talked a lot about technology, emerging technology, developing technology. Talk about sports for 1 second. What's one thing that you've seen in your years of officiating that you think is not going to stand the test of time in terms of new rules or old rules that need to go away? Just one.
Boy, that's a fun question. And so if we want to go into football, I think it's the idea of um, the pass happy football attack. I'm maybe a little bit old school. Maybe not quite. I'm from Ohio, or I live in Ohio, and so Ohio State Woody Hayes, if you remember him, and Ohio Woody Hayes would say, when you pass the ball, three things can happen, and two of them are bad. And so he was, certainly run first, and we've made a transition to pass first, and I think the pendulum has almost swung too far, where the idea that a ground game or a running attack is antiquated, right? And
Yeah.
it's that's for the guys with the leather helmets, and so we're going to pass. But I think what you're always going to see is that it's going to take balance, and you're going to have to be able to run the ball, and you're going to have to be able to pass the ball, and you're going to have to do those things, both of those things, well, when it's appropriate. And so I can see, certainly this mentality of throwing the ball. I'm starting to see it at the high school level. Where high schools have a pass first, approach and mentality,
Right.
and it just doesn't always work because there were football's a running game, or it's a ground game first. At least that's my opinion, and I think that needs to be a point of emphasis. So that's an example, I would say, more of strategy. Now, if you wanted to talk about rules, basketball is I'll say probably where I would um, indicate that in high school. I think, by the next 10 years, I think there's going to be a shot clock in high school basketball. I think there has to be. A shot clock changes the game as much as the 3-point line changed the game when it was implemented almost 40 years ago.
Right.
And I think you've got a shot clock in the NBA, you've got it in college, and I think we're going to have it in high school. And I think it's going to make the high school game a better experience.
I agree with that. I mean, I have two things to say about your first point, and that is one, I'm not a Longhorn, but I'm married to one, and I live in Austin, Texas, and um, Daryl Royal is often the one credited with saying, when you throw the ball, only two
Okay.
things can happen, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. It's just it's a somebody said it
Right.
first,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but I get that. But metaphorically, what you're saying about the RPO offense and the P seeming to be coming ahead of R all the time, right?
Right.
Um, I mean, that's what the option is always about, is to try to shake somebody loose and have a back hang out in the flat so you can dump it off to them or call them
Right.
back to get a handoff. But um, bottom line is that's actually anecdotally, I think, metaphorically at least, that's actually what we're saying about artificial intelligence too. When we talk about pragmatism, whether that's the way Reynolds is going about it, or I think we all agree most business needs to look at what's happening with automation and machine intelligence is that we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need humans in the loop. We need the tacit knowledge that humans have about how things work within a specific business in a specific industry. We need to leverage that as much as we do something that can be prompted to get an answer on what to do next. And that's just popular AI today, not just um, not not all the other ways we've already discussed today, agents and everything else. All of the above, I think, I do require humans to be accounted for in terms of the decision making, the next move, the next best action, and ultimately, what has yielded to the machine versus what is managed in concert between machine and human.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's it. It sounds like you guys are doing a lot of that at Reynolds right now, and commend you for it. Chris, I don't know if you had any more questions, but
I was a swimmer in college, so this body was a lot smaller back then, even though I look like a football player. My change, it was really the pull down and breaststroke. They've allowed an undulation, but we don't need to talk about that at this point. Too much into the minutia, and yeah, I don't need to get into that.
no,
But well, man, what a great conversation we've had.
we don't need to talk any undulation right now.
Yeah, you don't need to know my next sentence would have been,
yeah.
something not good. But Will, what a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm excited to see where Reynolds is going, because I've been close to that data aggregation for a number of years, and it's whoever figures that out completely is really going to make a huge stamp on the automotive industry, and helping dealers and retailers kind of bring it all together and take that one step forward. But please, for God's sakes, do not allow any of your dealers, because I just got it a week ago, do not let your dealers send an Excel file of their customer data to you over email. Please, God, no. And I hope they don't do anything like that, sending it up to a chat GPT prompt. Can we all accept that as a bad idea?
Absolutely. Yeah, we will do our level best not to allow that to happen.
100%.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate your time and appreciate your enthusiasm about AI. Like I said earlier, I think there is a lot to be excited about, and we're looking forward to what's around the corner.
You bet, Will. Thanks so much for joining us, and looking forward to sharing this with the world here in the next week or so. And again, future meetings with you as we continue to help dealers do what they do. And thanks for taking the time with us today. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, let me know whenever next time you're in Dayton, Ohio.
Well, guess what?
Next week.
Oh, are you coming?
Yeah, I have a dealer down in Akron that I'm going to be talking to next week. I know that's on the other side of the state, but I'm up there quite a bit. I'm in Cleveland more than I am Columbus, but
okay.
But we'll make it happen soon.
Yeah. Give me a holler. We'd love to get together.
Definitely.
Same with you, Chris.
Great meeting with you, Will.